Hello, this is Steve Crom, and welcome to the OXYGY series of podcasts on the topic of agility. I'm a partner with OXYGY. The firm is in the business of helping clients rethink, innovate, and implement new ways of working. My personal consulting work, mainly over the last 15 years, has been working with leaders and leadership teams on their effectiveness. Why agility? I think all of us have seen over the last 10 years that the business environments have become more complex in nearly every sector. Companies have evolved from doing business predominantly in one way and now have to run multiple business models simultaneously. And as the world becomes less and less predictable, the current COVID crisis is an example, being adaptive and finding agile ways of working are more relevant than ever. We're going to look at agility at 4 different levels in terms of the individual and teams, functions, and organizations. And this first in the series is a podcast to define and frame the topic of agility. In subsequent podcasts, we'll explore further the role of the leader. I'm very happy to have with me Günter Kloucek, who is my partner in this podcast series. And Günter, please introduce yourself.
I'm Günter Kloucek. I joined OXYGY as a director about a year ago. Prior to consulting, I've been working for pharmaceutical industry for more than 25 years, holding various operational and strategic leadership roles, including GM positions in Austria and Germany, and chief of staff and head of strategy in the Europe and Canada region.
Great. So Günter, one of the things I think you and I have both experienced in our time in business is the gap between intention and reality, between aspiration and the way things are in the day-to-day world. And there's been a recent study, of course, that showed that everybody agrees that agility is an important topic, but very few people are satisfied that they're there. Why do you think it's so challenging to create an agile organization?
I think it's the combination of speed and complexity which makes leading in such an environment so challenging. A key issue is that responding to changes and adapting structures, processes, systems, and so on really takes time. And from my experience in major transformation projects, it may take easily 1 to 2 years for people to settle in their new roles and new ways of working, in addition to the design phase. And if you are not changing fast enough, environment and context may have developed further, making your initial change efforts irrelevant in the worst case. The world has become increasingly complex nowadays. So past experience and best practices do no longer help. Foresight and prediction has become extremely difficult given the high number of interacting changes evolving with one another. Therefore, I think agility has become a key organizational and leadership capability to adapt in a timely manner to drive in today's unpredictable world. In short, for me, it's actually a do or die question.
I think you're right that the way you change has got to be agile in itself. When you say that if it takes 1 or 2 years, and it seems to me these days that every 18 months we're announcing a new organization change and so I think we've got to be much more quicker and much more focused in how we do that. You also mentioned that best practices are less helpful when we're in a chaotic environment where we've never done this before. COVID-19, who's been confronted by that on this scale? No one. So you can't reach into the playbook and predefine the right thing to do. And I'm also been using recently a reference by Snowden and Boone, and they talk about the Kuhn-Levin framework, which says that the trick is really to judge what context am I working in as a leader. They classify 4 types, that there's the kind of the simple one where you just have to categorize and get on with it, complicated, where you need to analyze, and complex where you need to kind of probe to better understand, and the chaotic where the first thing to do is act, right? And then see how it works and then iterate your way and improve as you go. It's what we're all living with currently. So I see agility, like your opinion, Günter, agility is not the new fad. It's not it doesn't replace how we've led in the past. It's more, we need to broaden our repertoire. It's like dancing to different tunes. And if all you know how to do is the Viennese waltz and all of a sudden a salsa comes on, you're stuck. How do you see it, Günter?
Yeah. Actually, to illustrate what you have just described, this brings an example up to my mind. When I joined life science industry, the go-to-market approach was one of shared voice in a simple or complicated context, but it was following a clear cause and effect relationship. Decisions were taken by HCPs. The more sales reps or sales force lines, the more opportunities to convince the customers they hire the sales. Based on data and facts such as penetration curves and optimal call frequency, you could define a right answer. And nowadays, as you said, the context is far more complex. Access restrictions imposed by customers, shifting stakeholder balance of power to payers and patients, wide range of digital channels, and changed information behavior, all influencing each other. So today, for me, there's no obvious right answer, and experimenting, testing different engagement approaches, and deciding on the outcome, on the emerging pattern, may be the way forward. And as you said, depending on the complexity of the context, leaders and their companies need to complement or even replace traditional leadership styles with agile ones. And I think for building and leading agile organizations, leaders have actually two key roles. The first one is architects of their organization's vision, purpose, strategy, structure, and so on, to create the framework for agile organizations. And the second is role model, because as role models, they influence how agile an organization's culture is. This consequently means leaders need to learn how to develop themselves for agile mindsets and behaviors, how to support their teams to adopt new ways of working, and finally, how to create an agile organization design and culture, which is enabling and reinforcing agile working.
You mentioned, Günter, that developing yourself as a leader is a key to agility. Say more about that, please.
Yeah. In a traditional organizations, leaders brought content, certainty, control, and authority based on their rank. In situations where the complexity is high, where you cannot predict what will happen because you have a lot of unknowns, leaders need to shift from being the masters of the organization to servants of its success. And what I mean with that is a servant leader creates an environment of personal growth through humility, through giving priority to the interest of others, and through providing necessary support and development. Simply put, the leader cares to inspire engagement. But at the same time, the leader provides proactively leadership with the right balance of hierarchical power on the one hand, and on the other one, inclusion or collaboration to gain the commitment from others to jointly accomplish goals and to stimulate performance on an individual and organizational level.
I also think your point about there is no one right answer, right? There are solutions. And if the leader himself or herself, you mentioned humility, says, I'm learning in this process. I want to grow. I want to do things differently, right? Because we need the whole capacity of the organization, right? To both sense what's going on and to collaborate. You don't often hear the word humility associated with leadership, Günter. You normally think of, right, charismatic, but show us where to go. I mean, why did you choose that word, humility?
Yeah, humility actually is a field where a lot of research has been done, and it has been shown that it improves the quality of the leader-follower relationship and consequently the engagement. And I can confirm that from personal experience. Humility, and when I'm talking about humility, I mean understanding your strengths and weaknesses, or admitting your fallibility and mistakes, or putting your achievements into perspective, and so on. Humility is absolutely important for gaining the engagement which is required for agile working. And humility improves the ability to generate, communicate, and implement a vision incorporating the viewpoints of your employees. And finally, it keeps you as a leader grounded.
In that sense, you're role modeling that you as a leader don't expect people to necessarily have all the answers or to get it right the first time, but there is a process of being focused about learning collectively and tapping into people's creativity. Let's go back to this topic of organizations take on the personality of their leaders. I've definitely seen that in my experience. And say more about what you mean by leading by example. Specifically, what behaviors do you think leaders should role model to help create a more agile culture and an organization?
I think it's absolutely key to role model the changing behavior you expect of everyone in the organization, including yourself. So co-define the expected behavior to realize your vision and vision, and hold yourselves and others accountable for both, actually, the behaviors and outcomes. For example, if you want your people to be agile, experimental, and adaptive, then encourage challenges to status quo and not being annoyed by dissent. Appreciate diversity, acknowledge questioning and being curious, and finally define failure as a source of learning and innovation. And I'm a strong believer that you need to demonstrate your commitment and willingness to sacrifice through words and actions. This is the only way to gain trust and credibility in the eyes of your colleagues and employees, which is actually needed to enhance loyalty and to inspire a commitment to follow your vision.
Sacrifice. That's a strong word. Can you give me an example when you were leading an organization and you personally made sacrifices?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. For example, when I change travel policies for cost-saving reasons, I can not keep my own travel privileges. When I encourage the use of digital means, I need to take time to communicate via these channels too. When priorities change, I must simply not shy away from tough resource allocation decisions.
So what's good for the organization is good for the leader, and the leader has got to step out and show by example, including making sacrifices, and maybe especially making sacrifices to show that he or she has the good intent, the good will, also the common good in mind, right, for the whole group. Well, thank you for sharing those, Günter. So this concludes our first in the podcast series on the topic of agility. The next podcast dive further into the role of leaders and look more closely at what we see as 6 key attributes of agile leaders. 1, the ability to co-develop a unifying purpose. 2, being entrepreneurial, which includes anticipating trends and opportunities. 3, fostering experimentation. 4, empowering and delegate to the lowest level of the organization possible. And also the supporting development of individual and organizations at every level. So we hope you'll join the dialogue. Reach out to us via email or visit us on LinkedIn or the OXYGY website, and we enjoy and look forward to hearing from you and learning from you as well. Thank you very much.